now we're going to head over to our final speaker, Philipp. As co-director of the Sortition Foundation, Philipp regularly talks to policymakers about involving citizens in decision-making. As such, he can provide valuable input regarding how to approach politicians or other public officials on complex decision-making and policymaking. Over to you, Philipp.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Thank you. Can I just make sure you can see my slides okay, Kate?
Yes, we can see and hear you.
Brilliant. Then I assume that everybody else can do so as well. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about how to engage with policymakers. And I'm going to present you one very quick slide about who I am and what we do, so you get an idea from what background this comes from. So we design citizens engagement processes. So I come a little bit from a background as partly an activist trying to campaign for these processes to be implemented, but also just as a kind of delivering body for these types of citizens engagement workshops. Just the pictures on the right are photos from one of the biggest projects we've run so far, which is the UK Climate Assembly, which maybe some of you have come across. And basically what this process and all these other processes we do does is to take a randomly selected sample of people from the population to give advice to policymakers on a particular policy issue. And I'm also a member of the Global Shapers Up in Cambridge. Now, I don't want to spend any more time on this, but rather go ahead to give you some advice and some suggestions that I myself have developed over the time as I spent talking to some of these policymakers on how do you actually talk to politicians, civil servants, people who work in local or central government, etc. So I'm going to have this in two parts. Our first part is a little bit on how should you think about policymakers and how can you try to see their world, or how can you see the world through their eyes? And then my second bit is going to be on what does that mean for you, and how do you then approach these people? So I'm trying to ask you whether you can try to understand the mission or the agenda that a politician or a policymaker or a civil servant has. So this depends on whether you're talking about a politician who is an elected official, or you're talking about just an officer whose job it is to carry out some work in a department or in an authority, a local or combined authority. Then that's the first thing. Can you understand what is their mission, what they're really trying to do in their job, or as in their, what's the mandate they got when they got elected? Secondly, can you understand what the obstacles are that they have in their way? So quite often they really want to do this, but they find themselves in a position where they can't for some reason, partly maybe because there's something in the way that's stopping them from actually implementing what they're trying to do. You know, this could be public perception, it could be opponents, political opponents, whatever. But sometimes it could just also be other things coming at them. So COVID-19 might be a good example of something that has been an obstacle to for a lot of policymakers recently, because they had to just refocus their attention a lot. So there's problems that are in their way that stop them from following their mission. And then finally, you should also understand a little bit, what's the personality, what's the context of that person, or maybe that body or this organization that you're trying to approach. Now, what does that mean for you? If you were trying to talk to these people and you've got an idea or a particular policy issue, or you've got a suggestion to make or whatever, you're trying to approach these policymakers, what does that mean for you? And so what I'm suggesting is that you should think about whether your idea could perhaps align with their mission or their agenda. Can you think of a way that what you're suggesting actually makes sense to that policy maker, to that politician suggesting a way to change the law, or the civil servant trying to work out how to implement that? Can you think of how your idea can help them? Or can you think of just a way of removing the obstacle I just mentioned earlier from that path in a way that, you know, they can make progress with what they are trying to do. So you say, look, I know that's what you want, and I know you're stuck with this, but I can help you remove that obstacle for you. And then finally, can you think of a way that what you're trying to do fits with their context or their personality somehow? Because you know, sometimes you can just be in that position where you're like, well, I'm trying to talk to you about something which I know is not actually on your agenda. It's not something that you care about in general. It's not actually removing any of your obstacles for you, but still I'm trying to make you understand that for you personally, for your context, this is relevant. I don't know, if you're talking about migration and someone, a politician or an elected MP, for example, has a migration background, maybe they're more likely or more keen to help you. Or if you can explain to them that you're now in a position where they were 10 years ago, and you're like, well, I know you were working on a different topic, but actually you're in the same position as I used to be. You used to be in the same position as I am now. Maybe they'd be keen to help you. So these are just some ideas for you to kind of try to frame what you are trying to sell to these policymakers when you think about your idea or your issue that you're trying to sell. Now, let me just give some final general advice. First of all, go do your homework. So it's super important you go sit down and you search for the person you're going to talk to, the person you're going to contact, or you're going to send your requests to. Make sure you understand who that person is. Follow the questions I just had on the previous slide. You know, understand who that person is, what they want, what they don't want, what their personality is. Some of this is really hard, especially these kind of personality and context issues. If you try to read a little bit what their kind of career path is, that might help, but sometimes it's you wouldn't even know what that person is like until you actually speak to them or meet with them. But trying to understand that is really important, and it's generally, it can be really bad if you go into a meeting and you're trying to convince somebody to do something, but you haven't actually realized that they have already tried to do something like that, or they already have a take on this, or they have a position on that. So you should make sure you know where they are before you go and speak to them. Next, then you should try to go and speak to people directly and try to make appointments. A lot of people are afraid of making appointments with people, with other politicians, or generally people who are kind of important. Don't be afraid. Just try to make an appointment. Actually, a lot of the elected politicians, especially in the local authorities, are really keen to meet up with people, especially if it's new people, because the experience that a lot of local authority politicians have shared with me, like councillors and so on, is actually they always get the same kind of inputs from always the same kind of people, the usual suspects who come to them and always say the same kinds of things, and they really want to speak to new people and get different perspectives and new ideas. So go and try to meet with them directly. Be persistent, don't be hesitant. And persistency, I think that's a big message that came out from my previous speakers as well. Persistency is really important. You're not going to succeed on the first attempt. You need to try several times. And as you do so, please stay polite and friendly. And, you know, these people are really busy. They get a lot of requests, and a lot of people write to them and ask them to please do this, please do that. Just make sure you stay persistent, but you stay positive, because, you know, these people are fine as long as you stay friendly. What they don't like is if someone becomes angry with them and then says, oh, you haven't answered to my last email, and I really want to meet up with you, and I told you I want to meet up, and this is important. This is not going to help. This is just going to make them angry and even more reluctant to meet up with you. So just stay positive and friendly. And I think from all the feedback I've gotten from local councillors is that they really say, look, I love to meet up with someone who's positive, but I sometimes feel really intimidated by some people, which makes me less likely to actually speak to them. So yeah, that's some of my general advice. I hope this was helpful, and I think I've already run over my time. Thanks very much for the attention, and I look forward to answering your questions later.
Thank you so much, Philip. Okay.